Hello, welcome back. This is episode 1 of the Wholistic House podcast. And to start off, why should anyone listen to this episode or future episodes? Give us an introduction of who you are.
Well, hi, my name's Katrina Ellis and I'm a naturopath or a naturopathic doctor, iridologist, herbalist with over 30 years of proper clinical experience as a naturopath. So I'm not just someone that writes a book, and talks about things and doesn't have the actual clinical experience to back it up. And that's why I'm a little bit different than most people. I feel many times I love a podcast, don't get me wrong. I listen to them all the time and I absolutely love them, and they're done by some of the most amazing people in the world and they've taught me so much. But I do feel sometimes with a lot of podcasts that they're not backed by proper clinical experience, and you get a different way of looking at things and a different way to approach health when you're actually working in a clinic and you're doing back-to-back consults all the time, because it shows you what really works, not just on the books what works, but what works with real, genuine human beings.
Okay, so why do you feel like that's so important and what makes that so different?
I believe the difference is we can do all the research we want in the world. We can do clinical studies, all of these types of things, but it doesn't always relate to every individual or human being. So when you're in practice, you basically get to see the nuances and the differences within humans, which is why I love doing a lot of genetic work, DNA, to see the differences in people. And it also shows me that sometimes what they say on the books will work with one person does not actually work. So coming from a clinical background, I can actually see what works with different types of people, and I can put all of that information into practice and share it with people out there. The good thing with a podcast is not a lot of people can afford to always come and have a consult with someone like me. But if I'm there speaking about the knowledge, speaking about the amazing things that are helping people, then I might be able to help people on a wider scale without you having to go and spend a lot of money doing an individual consult.
Okay, I love that. Speaking on clinical background and experience, do you want to take us back to when you first started practicing?
Okay, I'll take you back, but it's going to be a long, long way back. Sorry, but I mean that. It's true. Even though I only look 25, I'm actually a lot older. So I started my career basically out of school, so very close out of school. On graduation, even before graduation, I was flown to Thailand to work for the Deputy Prime Minister over there in his prestigious health retreat, Shiva Som. So as soon as I graduated, he flew me back over to Thailand, and I was basically thrown in there with 400 Thai staff and some of the most elite people in the world, actresses, royalty, you name it, right? So basically, I found myself as a young, immature naturopath, recently graduated, amongst the rich and elite in the world in this beautiful place, Shiva Som. And my job was not just to be a naturopath and to do consults. I was working 6 days a week, just like a Thai person, because they only have 1 day off a week and basically 2 weeks off a year, consulting back to back all day, but also working with doctors. We were basically doing biohacking, and this was over 25 years ago or longer. So it taught me a lot. I had to work with the chefs, create menus, create weight loss programs. We were doing infusions back then, working with spas, hydrotherapy, you name it. So the education was incredible. I did find at this time, and I did write this in one of my books, that I was quite young and I used to wear glasses to make myself look old or more intelligent. And I would be doing consults, and what started to rock me after a period of time is I'd have people come into the room, and they might be in their 70s or 80s, elite business people who all of a sudden found themselves diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I felt like I was in an immature position to help them. Even though I had all the book knowledge, I didn't yet have the clinical experience to actually talk from that perspective, right? So that was one of my kind of parts to my journey. Basically, I stayed there a very long time until I got exposed to Agent Orange, and I ended up with a very rare and aggressive form of ovarian cancer.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so I was super healthy, or I believed I was super healthy.
What do you mean you believed you were super healthy?
Well, I thought I was, but I didn't realise at the time. I thought I was young and invincible, as we all do. So I was working, as I said, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, consulting up to 15 people a day. I was being flown all around the world, going to spas, looking for new technology to bring back, because one of my loves is I love the old school of naturopathy, but I love integrating it with modern technology. Right, so that's my gift. That's what I absolutely love. German technology, Russian technology, bring it on in. I want to be able to diagnose stuff freaking quickly. Speed now. Like my brain operates a bit like AI even back then. So I could see the vision.
Yeah.
So basically I was doing that. I was working, but still after 4 or 5 years, I still thought I was invincible. And at the time, I was in a bad relationship, trying to get rid of this person, but knew there was some toxicity there, some bad patterns. So I had the bad relationship, the overwork, going to bed late because I was getting home late. So I did have a lot of bad patterns going. And then the other thing that started to happen is the place that I was working and where I lived, there was an airport that they were digging up, and as they were digging it up, they hit some barrels onto the ground, and this orange mist spread over the town for about 3 to 4 weeks before they organised a clean-up, right? In that period of time, I could smell the mist, it smelled acidic. I was like, what is this? And I knew straight away it was incredibly toxic. And after a few weeks of this kind of happening, I noticed this ball started to form in my belly, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is strange. So I thought to myself, maybe it's just from stress or there's something hormonal, and I was starting to think, oh, it could be an ovarian cyst, maybe it's something simple like that. So it got bigger and bigger every day, and I had no other symptoms. I wasn't tired, anything like that, but I just saw this thing growing in my belly and it wouldn't go down. So I went to the hospital, the local hospital, and they did an ultrasound, and they said, you've got a cyst on your right ovary. And I was like, oh, wow, a cyst. Okay, well, I know how to get rid of that. The good old castor oil packs, which is big popular today. And I wrapped myself in my castor oil, started taking my estrogen modulators, all the things to get rid of a cyst, but it didn't go down. And I was like, oh, wow, this is strange. Let's go to the top hospital in Bangkok and I'll get another diagnosis. So I went up there and they went, oh, yes, you've got a cyst, but it's on your other ovary. And I was like, so it's not on that ovary? And they went, no, it's on that ovary. So another misdiagnosis. And I was like, this is really strange. And it kept getting bigger to the point my whole belly was starting to protrude. So luckily I had an amazing friend that I'd worked for years who used to own Skype, and he was just incredible. And he flew me over to UCLA in America, and I went over there, and top gynecologist in America. And I was like, and by that stage, if I lay down, it was looking like I was pregnant, right? And so I went over to them, and same thing. He goes, no, it's definitely not cancer. It could be something borderline, but it's not dangerous. But it seems to be on both ovaries now. And I was just like, you're kidding. He goes, look, the way we're going to deal with this is we'll just remove your ovaries. And I was like, oh, what? I'm 27 here. I want to have babies. This is not going to happen. But, oh, look, we'll move one over, and if the other one looks like it needs to go, we'll take that out too. So there I was, and I had the thought, what am I going to do here? So I basically got a phone call all of a sudden from Australia. It was a homeopath in Australia that knew my family, and he said, come back to Australia. I know how to heal you. So I jumped on a plane, came back to Australia, and went and saw this amazing man who started doing these incredible techniques. He was in his 80s. He did the raindrop technique. It's an old Indian technique where they work on spots on the body, where they use homeopathics and all these other beautiful healing techniques. And within 4 to 5 weeks, my belly went down. And I thought, this is amazing. He's definitely dealt with whatever's there. In between all this, I also got diagnosed with, it was high-tip disease. It was all these other things. So I'd had 7 misdiagnoses around the world. But I thought, I'm great now. My belly's flat. This is gone. I feel incredible. So just before I left, him being a homeopath, he asked me a few questions about my hormones and my emotions. And he gave me a remedy to take. And he said, this will deal with the emotional cause of what happened to you. So I thought, this is fantastic. He said, just take 3 of these little homeopathics So I took the homeopathics and I drove down to the coast to come and celebrate with my friends. And I got to the coast, and as soon as I arrived in my car, my belly blew up bigger than what it was before. And I was devastated. I got onto the phone to him, tried to ring him, I got through, and he just said, I don't know what's happened. So I started the process again and saw some doctors here who also misdiagnosed me, and no one at this stage ever said I had cancer. But by this stage, the tumour was so big, I had to sleep with a pillow and to hold the weight of the tumour. So it was as if I was almost 9 to 10 months pregnant. Right? So I got in with the doctor who said, look, let's just remove it. We still don't think it's dangerous. So basically, he wanted to also, if anything was bad, remove my ovaries. I made him sign a form to leave one ovary at least, in case I wanted to have children, to not remove anything to do with childbearing, basically, because I was still 27. I knew that was my destiny, right? So basically, I went under. The moment I woke up, I went, have I still got my ovaries? And the nurse went, yes, love, like this. So I was happy, even though they were lying to me, because they had removed one ovary and only left a slither of the other one. And I didn't find this out until years later. And so anyway, I woke up and no one wanted to come in to tell me what it really was. So it took them days, and I thought, I'm ready to go home. Like, let's go home here. I'm doing yoga in the room, bouncing off the walls, going, okay, let's get out of here. I'm so healthy. And then finally the doctor came in and he said, look, I'm so sorry. And I was like, what? Didn't you get it? He goes, well, yes, we got it. But as we were taking it out, it split open. Right, and it all went back inside of you. And I'm like, what is it? And he goes, well, it's turned out to be one of the most aggressive ovarian cancers in the world, right? And it had split days before. It was starting to spill, and it split more on removal. And basically he said, look, we don't know what we're going to do, but we could give you intensive chemotherapy to extend your life, right? So here I was, 27, almost 28, being told, okay, well, you're going to die anyway, but we could extend your life by giving you aggressive chemotherapy, and being a naturopath for many years. So I was kind of caught in the midway of, what do I do? You know, do I use my natural medicine, or do I do what they say? But there was so much fear put into me about dying that I thought, well, maybe I could combine the two until I get more knowledge, you know, about my condition, how it happened, how to reverse the causes, and then I could go from there. And that's exactly what I did. So I started their treatment, but I did all the natural medicine possible. But most people will go in and say do chemotherapy and then have 3 weeks off. I did it for 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days in a row, right? So super intensive chemotherapy. I did that over about 90 hours. But by that stage, I was starting to get my courage and my power up and my belief in what had caused this. And I knew that I could actually treat this myself. So when I came in to have a meeting, they basically said, look, there's no white blood cells left at all. You could die of an infection. It seems like your body's getting resistant to the chemotherapy. And I looked at him and I said, thank you, but I'm going to go home and fix myself, right? And I basically felt at that stage I had gained the knowledge and I knew what had caused it, right? So I went home and I got phone call after phone call saying, if you don't come back, you're going to die, right? And I told my parents, just trust me, I know I can do this. So I went home and I went on this strict protocol. Basically, everything was organic. I was fasting. I did incredible fasting. Even back then, people didn't know much about fasting, but I knew a lot about fasting. So I did fasting, I did meditation, I did EFT, I did emotional work. So I worked with my mind, I worked on clearing all the traumas, and I worked on giving myself the nutritional knowledge and immunity that I needed for my body to fix itself, right? I started doing some tumour marker testing and saw my levels going down. So I knew I was on the right path. And within 6 months, I was basically cancer-free. Yeah. So I still went back for a checkup to that original doctor, oncologist and stuff to basically check. And he was kind of stunned. But he looked at me and he said, this is ovarian cancer. It'll come back in a year and you'll still be dead.
What?
Yeah.
So it really hasn't worked with anyone he's never cured anyone, basically.
Well, I don't know personally because I don't know the after or whether things have changed. But the interesting thing was I got to speak at a prostate cancer conference for the Prostate Cancer Society in Brisbane a little over a year and a half after this, after I wrote my book on how to fix cancer, my personal journey that turned into a bestseller. And I was invited to speak at this conference, and lo and behold, he was there too.
No way.
Yeah. So he was the first speaker and talked about, the treatments you need, the chemotherapy, the radiation, the hormone blockers, rah, rah, rah. And then I turned out to be the second speaker, and then I spoke about my journey, about the possibility of incorporating both and how you could turn things around, how you had to also use the power of your mind, plus nutritionals and all this. And he was looking over at me like I was a ghost, right? And at the end, everyone came up to speak to me, and I could see that he was kind of happy, that I was still there.
Yeah.
So I hoped in that moment and what I'd been through, and he did, I went up and shook his hand and stuff too, and I hope that maybe that opened his mind to other possibilities.
Do you feel like there's a lot of doctors that aren't open to, natural remedies and the natural kind of path alongside a more traditional path? I
think that's a definite possibility. Like after working as a clinical naturopath for so many years and doing a lot of specialty or love around the oncology field after my experience, I feel that there's a couple of things that are only trained one way and they don't do a lot of nutrition in the training, and they don't understand the power of the human body and it's the immune system and natural killer cells and their ability to heal, basically. And the beauty is combining the two or integrating the two can be more powerful than just using that on its own. So I do feel that, but I do feel a lot of doctors are trying to become more integrated, but they're being obviously blocked by legalities and all types of things like that we do not want to go into. Because I want to keep podcasting.
when you had the end of the chemotherapy, right, the intensive chemotherapy, had the meeting with the oncologist and then decided you're going to go back home, what were the kind of top main 3 things you focus on to get yourself better?
Okay, so top one was nutrition. So basically understanding, there was actually top three basically, so spirituality or healing emotional traumas, nutrition, 100%, diet, fasting, detoxing, right, was a big area. So basically, and then 3 nutritionals, right? So if I just break them down, number 1 for me was looking at changing my body terrain, basically. So what I mean by that is a certain terrain within the body, which is low in oxygen, high in acidity, high in inflammation, is a perfect opportunistic environment for bad things like parasites, bacteria, and cancer to thrive, right? So part of it for me was, okay, well, I was exposed to a dangerous toxin. If I don't get this out of my body, it's just going to keep damaging my DNA. So that was one big thing. So I thought, if I can build my nutritional defenses, help my body to detoxify naturally, what's a great way to detoxify? Water fasting. Cold pressed juice fasting for some people and some types of cancers, and depending on what kind of cold pressed juices you actually use, because you don't want them too high in sugar, right? Making sure my diet was always great. I never had sugar, but removing a lot of carbs that convert to sugar, making sure everything was organic, no pesticides, looking at detoxification. We use a lot of coffee enemas nowadays. Colonics were big back then, so basically detoxing anything toxic out of the body, oxygenating and alkalizing your environment. So it's a beautiful environment where bad things like cancer cannot thrive, which we've always known, right? That's 1. 2, my mindset, right? The belief, them telling me I wouldn't survive and that I'd be dead in a year makes me, I'm a stubborn person, right? I am one of the most stubborn people you will ever meet, right? But that made me more determined to tell them to go and basically. Because I was like, you are not donating my destiny. So So then I was like, okay, my mindset is very powerful here. If I have any traumas, I need to remove these traumas. What are the best therapies in the world that can do that? And I'd always been into The Biology of Belief, one of the best books ever of all time. He basically said that whatever you believe will become your destiny, and we can prove it through ourselves, right? So, and there's a few techniques which we know are incredible. So normal psychology, counselling, that great, but it's like a tape recorder to the brain. When we look at things like EFT, our Psych K, kinesiology, all these types of things, they're actually removing it from the subconscious. So I worked on those things. I worked on learning a lot of those techniques, doing daily EFT, doing meditation, and getting my mindset so it knew my only existence in my human body was to be cancer-free, right? And number 3, incredible nutritionals, right? So what I'm talking about is today we have some incredible things. So we can actually test today and do testing, like targeting testing, to find out how to block pathways of growth, but how to also cytotoxically target things as well, and how to modulate the immune system. Back then, that testing wasn't available. So it was something that I had to define through my own naturopathic knowledge. So what I'm talking about is, for instance, if I wanted to block angiogenesis, so angiogenesis is a process where capillaries are formed within the body, normally in the growth process, but where you don't want it is with cancer. Because if they create proteins like EGF, VEGF, and these sort of proteins, it steals capillary networks and brings in blood supply with insulin, with iron, whatever it may be, to make the cancer grow, right? So today we can use things like, we can use angioblock, vascustatin, from plants, the convolucus plant, genistein. Back then we didn't have that, so I used things like shark cartilage, right? Okay. Yeah. So sharks would create a protein that would stop that process of angiogenesis, and which was part of how they would have this hard exterior. And they discovered from the cartilage, if we took it, it would block angiogenic growth within the body. So I was taking up to 50 grams a day of shark cartilage, which is a lot. And I was, even back then, had access to infusions, so I was doing high-dose vitamin C infusions. So all the naturopathic kind of stuff, where I was looking at things like antioxidants, flooding my body with them so the inflammation was low and the free radical attack was low. So I brought in nutritionals alongside incredible diet and mind techniques to get my body into a state where it knew no other existence but good health.
That's incredible. I want to take it back. What was EFT, just for anyone that doesn't know what that is?
So EFT is emotional freedom technique, and it is a process where we use tapping at certain points within the body. So we have all these specialized points that we do throughout the body, and what that does is we're tapping away not a negative thought or a negative pattern, and we start tapping and processing it with something positive, right? And they've worked out those points have a connection to the subconscious, and they're very good at clearing anxiety, emotional traumas, patterns that you've developed, whether from this lifetime or from a previous lifetime. So a very simple technique, and something that anybody can learn and they can do at home themselves.
Perfect. Do you want to end at that?
Yeah, it's great.